So welcome everyone to Oppressed and Overrepresented, where we will be discussing the disproportionality of Black foster youth in the system. My name is Raquel Wilson. I am the proud Youth Voice Rising, newly changed, the program manager for the new Youth Voices Rising program that is very proud to be able to facilitate conversations where we not only get to amplify the voices of foster youth, but we get to educate those who serve us, and we get to empower some of foster youth who are going through some of the similar experiences that some of our panelists have and myself have experienced. And so we're very, very happy to have you here today, and thank you so much for joining us. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Please let us know what organization you're representing, what state you're in, and we're just really, really grateful to have you here today. So just a little bit about the Youth Voices Rising program. Through educational workshops, we host writing and poetry contests. We have paid contributor roles, internship opportunities. Youth Voices Rising's writing opportunities provides you writing opportunities to young people who have lived experience with the child welfare system and the juvenile justice system. I have been at this program for 3 years. My 3-year anniversary just passed on the 20th. And so through these 3 years, it just has been a blessing to be able to apply some of the things that I experienced and be able to help other youth navigate through not only the system, but after the system, and find ways to educate those who serve us by providing opportunities for them to raise awareness about the real issues that we've experienced, the raw truth, the things that they try to silence us from speaking about. Because if we speak about it, then, some people will have to be held accountable and some things will have to be changed. And so we're very, very excited to have you here today. If you want to stay updated on all of the wonderful things that Youth Voices Rising is doing, please feel free to follow us in our newsletter and follow us on all of our social media platforms, especially our Instagram, because that's where most of our opportunities and all the links and everything is posted. And so at this time, you should see a survey poll display on your screen. And this is just for us to identify if you're a current foster youth, if you identify as a resource parent, if you're a social worker, someone that serves foster youth, because we host workshops. We have a million opportunities for foster youth, and we would love to be able to connect with you to be able to see what type of opportunities and ways we can help some of your program participants or even yourself amplify your voice. And then the second question is just for us to know if I'm doing a good job in making sure that you guys are staying up to date and know about all of the things that we're doing here at the Youth Voices Rising program, excuse me. And so we're just going to allow some time for folks to fill out the survey, and then you should see the results pop up on your screen. Okay, and if you are, thank you. And if you didn't have time to fill it out, no worries. We'll have a post evaluation where you can tell us where you're from and how you heard about us as well. Thank you all for participating. I really love that there are folks on here that work with foster youth, and there's folks on here that are social workers. That makes me feel really good that you guys are showing up to conversations like this that's centered around us, and trying to find ways to help us better the system. And so thank you all who participated. We really appreciate you. And so without further ado, the moment that you guys all been waiting for, and I'm so excited to be introducing these panelists. And so without further ado, the first person that our first panelist is Atori Burrell, and she is an experienced community leader and visionary driven by young people. She takes pride in providing safe spaces for people to enjoy, prosper, and become fulfilled. As a young minister, her goal is to serve as an ombudsman, I think I'm saying that correctly, to the people, advocating, assisting, and equipping them for life's challenges. Tori has been recognized by Tori has been recognized by Solid Rock Enrichment Center, sitting on the Charter School Board of Advisors and San Bernardino County Independent Living Program as a motivational speaker. She hosts a free podcast, cooking 30-minute meals, and discussing current events and local resources to overcome poverty. Feel free to follow her on her LinkedIn account, which we will drop in the chat. Tori, thank you so much for being here and continuing to show up for the Voices Rising program. We're very, very happy to have you and grateful to have you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And so next we have Jarvell Williams, who has always represented Chicago, Illinois. Jarvell was born and raised in Cook County foster care system throughout his childhood. From these experiences, a deep passion for serving others was born. Jarvell is finishing his master's degree in nonprofit management, yes sir, at Marquette University. He proudly serves at the Milwaukee Community Justice Council, where his work focuses on eliminating racial disparities and inequalities within key pre-trial and re-entry decision points for those that are impacted by the justice system. Jarvell has a passion for the arts and believes it can be used as a tool for often necessary healing. In his free time, he enjoys traveling and learning about different cuisines. And so thank you so much, Jarvell, for joining us today. Jarvell is like one of the first participants that I worked with when I first started here at Foster and Media Connections. I did a COVID series amplifying the voices of foster youth, and Jarvell was one of the participants that has signed up to write. And so Jarvell, I'm just very, very happy to see you again, and that you were able to join us to share your perspective. And then so Nyasia wasn't able to join us. So I'm going to skip on over to Sade Daniels. And Sade Daniels is a highly sought public speaker, award-winning spoken word artist, and at a young age has close to 2 decades of experience working within the child welfare system and for reform efforts that center communities impacted by family separation. Beginning at age 16, Sade has been a part of groundbreaking research on the impact of group homes, supported widespread curriculum development and youth-led training for child welfare professionals throughout the state, as well as has experience as an experienced practitioner serving transitional age youth and families within the foster care and juvenile justice system. Sade uses her lived experience navigating through the system in her youth, her professional expertise partnering with children and families as a provider and an activist, and artistry to challenge inequities, honor the community's role in its own liberation, and promote healing. She is a proud graduate from a historical Black college, Philander Smith College, and holds a master's of social work from the University of California, Berkeley. She is the co-founder of Ashe Collaborative, I hope I'm saying that correctly, a consulting agency that centers the community in evidence-based co-designing for social justice. And so Sade, thank you so much for being here today. Sade has also wrote for the imprint and has participated on the other side with our sister program. And so Sade, we are definitely excited to have you here today and have you share your perspective. I mean, we appreciate you for your time.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you. And so last but certainly not least, we have Marquand Teese. And so the first time Marquand entered foster care was in 2005. He never felt foster care truly cared about kids. He wanted the next generation to feel wanted and loved. He has experience with counseling foster kids. And when he was in high school, he was made to be a counselor. And so Marquand is representing Kansas State. And Marquand, we're just definitely happy to have you here today and joining us to share your perspective. All right, you guys. And so I'm going to spin this question to everyone because, of course, we want to set the tone and give everybody some, everyone in the audience a background. So could you please briefly share your experiences while you were in the foster care system? And if you have juvenile justice experience, homelessness experience, please feel free to mention that as well, and how that experience impacted you, through growing up in the child welfare system. And Sade, since you're unmuted, I'll start off with you first.
Dang you, mute button. All right, so I actually entered foster care. Can y'all hear me well? Okay, perfect. So I entered foster care at 6 months and was in kinship up until I was 13. Formal foster care, so re-entered and ended up primarily in group home placement. So a lot of my experience was congregate care, low and high level group homes, and it really did kind of mirror my journey because I didn't really have familial settings. When I entered foster care, a lot of it was institutionalization. So even now in my advocacy work, it's very much focused on group homes. Like the research I did was on group homes, and continually it's like, how do we shift the trajectory for young people to where they're able to stay with families. But I will say that my experience made me very passionate about the ways that race impacted that journey, because all of the group homes that I lived in were filled with Black girls. Every single one of them was primarily Black girls. And I was a kid when I first noticed this, and I didn't fully understand it. We'll talk about this more in the session, but I will say that it creates this ideology of who exactly is bad and who isn't. Group homes specifically are for young people who have higher needs or who have more challenges. And like I just said, I lived in 4 different ones that were primarily actually exclusively Black girls. So I'll say, for like as an adolescent mind, it really had me thinking that Black girls, Black people were inherently bad because we were the ones that overpopulated those types of placements. I was able to go into transitional housing. Unfortunately, my experience, even post-emancipation, included homelessness during and before foster care. So I definitely see linkages between the system as well as the homelessness systems. But yeah, my experience, I basically was in foster care my entire life. So was my mother, and so was my grandmother.
Wow, that's I want to use the word crazy. That's really crazy to hear, and I'm really sorry for your experiences. And it just kind of shows the generational trauma that some of us experience as Black foster youth, being pipelined through the system, and then having to navigate through the system. While our parents also have experienced the system. And so thank you so much, Sade, for sharing that, your perspective. And so next I will call on Jarvell, and then Marquand and Natori. Please feel free to just unmute yourself and jump in.
Can you reiterate the question, please?
Yes. So please share your experience, while you were in foster care. Where were you at? How many years were you in care? And if you have juvenile justice experience, homeless experience, I think that is also important to mention that too as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So again, I'm Jarvell Williams. I'm from Chicago, and right now I'm currently in Milwaukee at Marquette University, finishing my master's in nonprofit public service. So yeah, I've spent about 21 years in care, and I'm 25 right now. And so I extended my wardship, as they used to call it, when I was 18 going into college, because I didn't have no money. So it was the only opportunity for me to pay for my post-secondary education, and really, a time to escape from being around parents. And so I grew up in Chicago, straight from birth and care. I was removed from my mom's arms in Streeter, Illinois, entered the Cook County foster care system. And yeah, I don't know how deep y'all want to go into this. I see the questions, and so it's going to be very interesting discussing this. But I would just say that I kind of started my life with a lot of love and attention, growing up in a very conservative, but again, loving Christian family up until the age of 7. And then I was there was an opportunity for me to be placed with my my siblings. I have about 4 siblings, and so we're gonna get into all that. But one of my siblings was with another foster parent, but they thought this was an opportunity for reunification. And so I was placed with them for about 2.5 years until the untimely death of that foster parent. And then I was put into another home. And then this home started a continuous cycle of verbal and physical abuse up until the age of 16, where I got the courage to basically run away from that home and then entered this interesting cycle of being back into the system, where I had the opportunity to be placed in the mirage of shelters within Chicago until finally returning to the placement of my first foster family. And then as a result of all of those years of abuse, neglect, and just trauma that I've experienced, wasn't able to stay with that family. However, I'm still connected with them to this day. It's the only person I consider my mother. But I was placed with, I see one of those questions, and it's going to get into it, a white family. And then I was spent with them the last year of 17 to 18, and then spent the summer entering my college years, really just doing a lot of healing and reflective work, going to therapy. You know, back in the day, I was really like, I didn't like therapy. I didn't know what it was, but this is my first time having actual Black therapists, okay? And then entering college, and then that started another wave of my journey. And being in college, and I don't know if there's a webinar for this, but being in care and being in college at the same time was an experience within itself. But I will say that it really helped me become the person I am today, and really reflect on my life and the ways of thinking of it all as a lesson, and like how I can be more of service to my community and those that I formally represent. So that's pretty much the whirlwind of my life. And then we'll go into steps as we answer some specific questions. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Jarvel. And I'm very, very proud of you. Congratulations on beginning your master's, and see it through, my brother. And if you need any help, let me know. I have one in nonprofit management too as well. So let me know if you need any connections. And Tori, I'll pass that same question over to you. Do you need me to repeat it?
No, I understand the question. So good morning, everyone. Good afternoon to everyone who's not on my side of town. I'm from California. It's about 10:18 a.m. on this side. And I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to see so many people that have tuned into this webinar this morning. I entered into foster care at the age of 14 years old, so it was a little different than a lot of people's experience. I was an adolescent right at the peak of, you know, the most crucial years I would consider, teenager, just going through a lot of emotional problems. And I was removed from my adoptive grandmother's home due to, as the courts would consider, neglect. I didn't quite understand it at the time, because I felt as though, you know, she's been taking care of me, she's been providing for me, and so everything is all good. But she had gotten tired by that time of, you know, just raising a lot of children. And by the time it was time for me to, you know, give her my fair share of troubles, she wasn't having it. So she pretty much relinquished her rights. And so my only option was to go into foster care. The reason why I was adopted in the very first place is due to drug abuse by my father, the murder of my mother, and incarceration by, you know, of my father, and, you know, the other people around me and my family. And so, yeah, so that's why my grandmother adopted us. I am a sibling of 7 children, so I'm second to the youngest. I have lots of brothers and sisters. My grandmother adopted us and took us in, brought us out to San Bernardino County. We're originally from Los Angeles County, and pretty much raised us up until I was 14 years old, and she told me I had to go. And so, so I went into the foster care system, and it was actually looking in hindsight, it was a safe haven for me. It really, was able to trigger some things within me to help me prosper as an adult, and teach me some of these like key qualities and skills that I have now. But in the midst of the trial, I did not see, what I was going through and some of the lessons that I would have learned. I've been in about 8 different foster homes. I've been to group homes. I've been in shelters. I've been considered AWOL. I've just had a lot of trauma within the foster care system, but I'm glad that I've, overcome that situation and been able to find some beauty out of it. So I'm here to just share my story, give a little bit of insight on, how it's impacted me, and hopefully I can impact somebody else as well.
Yes, thank you, Atori. Take it away, Marquand.
All right, so I entered the system along with my brother. I was 5 and he was 3. It seems like it was just like yesterday. Our mom went out that morning to go to the store, and whatever happened, she wound up being arrested. And next thing we know, the cops raid into the house, and me and my brother just watching TV. And then that was the start of our journey. They took us to like a group home where we were with other kids. And we lasted in there for about 3 months before we moved in with we got guardianship with our great grandmother, which only lasted about a little bit under a year. They wound up taking us away, saying that she was too old and couldn't take care of us. So we wound up going back into foster care, and we wound up staying with someone. And then we wound up getting a relative in Kansas, wound up picking us up, and then we wound up ending up in Kansas. By this time, we're 9 and 7, and then that only lasted 2 years. Wind up going back into the system, and at 14 and 16, wind up being separated. And then I just got emancipated at 16, and my brother was in the system still. And that has, with my brother still being in the system and being separated, is what pushed me to be involved in this, to keep siblings together and focus on mental health.
Wow, Marquand, thank you so much. And this is why I felt like that was very important for me to have Black males on this call, because often there's not safe spaces created for males to speak about their experiences where they feel comfortable and welcome. And so, putting you putting you and Jarvell and having you both here today, to share this space with me, Sade, and Atori, I really am appreciative of it, because we often don't see that. And so thank you. And so you guys talk about some of the experiences that you guys have had, how you, were transitioned into the foster care system, and, whether it was good or bad, but, the trauma that you experienced. So what are some possible solutions for issues such as heavy regulation on foster youth, the lack of focus on reunification, foster parents not having resources, the bio parent not having resources to actually be successful and be able to reunify with their child. So let's dive into all of those. And so I'll pass it off and start off with Jarvell, and then you guys can just feel free to unmute yourself and chime in if you would like to answer this question.
Yeah, this is a heavy question. Goodness. I had to write down some notes to keep my mind in check. But I guess one of the first things that I want to talk about is like what it means to provide opportunities for foster youth in terms of professional development and life skills very early on to tackle a lot of the different stigmas that's going to come with being labeled as a foster youth, right? And immediately when you share that, sometimes it can be like a full, smoke screen is put over you. And depending on who you're speaking to, it can be difficult to sort of access the same resources in the same way as another child is. And so having specific resources from the school, from whatever, in-care organization that you're a part of, whether or not these resources are outsourced, right, to different organizations that specialize in youth serving initiatives can really be helpful. And I think that kind of has to start as soon as you enter care, honestly. Obviously, I've entered care when I was a baby. So just being around, I don't really remember. And I haven't been adopted since I was 9, right? And then after that, that's a whole, thing of like, it seems like all the services just stopped at that point. But I don't really remember a lot of services when I was a child. It seemed like there was like a visit here and there. And so I was a child, there wasn't a lot um like talk about foster care with me. And then when I went and back and when I got into my adoption placement, it just seemed like all of my services was just focused on my experiences as another kid, another Black male. And so I think specific services around that is important. And then the last thing I would say, because this is a hard question to tackle, is just that I spoke about therapy and how when I was younger, I didn't like it, right? I think sometimes therapy is used as a punishment for Black youth, and sometimes it's used as an opportunity to sort of over medical, what's the term? Just use medicine as a tool again for punishment and control sometimes. I wasn't placed on any medicine as I was a child. That was one of the great things my adoptive parents actually did for me. They just didn't want me to be put on any sort of pills or any sort of like medicine to help calm me down because I was an overactive student in school. But I think actually being provided with different opportunities of group therapy, individualized therapy, different things to like sort of think about the different events that happen prior to you entering care is important because I really wasn't able to unpack all of those experiences until I became a legal adult, right? And so I think that's important. And then the last thing I'll tackle right now is just lack of focus on reunification. I think reunification is something that is necessary, again, when you enter care. And reunification does not have to look like, and I don't like when this is just used as a blanket statement that, oh, we're just going to place the kid back into the hands of an unfit parent. Like, that's not what that means. It means being aware of where your parents are, knowing who your siblings are, right? Knowing their names, knowing their grandparents, right? Having some sort of understanding of where you come from. I didn't have that, right? Until I became 18. So, and I saw for myself using the great tool of Facebook. So it was really important to like have people come and speak to you about the resources that are available to you, and to reinvent what a case manager means. Can we like do that? Can we like not over put students and children on case managers and actually have a person whose sole job is to talk about you and what you personally need rather than you as just a case number? That was a hard question to tackle, but thank you.
Thank you, Jarvel. I appreciate it. Appreciate your expertise and your perspective. Sade, did you want to chime in? Okay.
Yeah. So I think this is a really good question, and I want to kind of tackle into Jarvel's point around family engagement in the field. So we know that for the most part, most children are removed not because of abuse, not because of physical abuse or violence, but because of neglect. Neglect is oftentimes connected to poverty. And so there's this easy kind of slope how you can see the ways in which we are penalizing people for being poor. We are penalizing people for not having resources, and thus we end up penalizing people for racism that's connected to said poverty. So for my own experience, when I was removed, I thought my mother had done something horribly wrong. And so I hated her. And every time I read court reports, it reiterated all the wrong things she had done as a parent. So I believe that, family was something I wasn't supposed to have, that this system was basically this system said that my mother was not a good mother. So I believe she wasn't a good mother. At no point did I actually stop to think about the fact that, yeah, she may not be the greatest mom, but she also don't really have too many resources. And then later down the line, I realized her own trajectory in the same system that I was being raised in. And I had to stop and think, like, if my mom was raised by this system, and then I end up in the system. Why is it that my mom made the mistake, but maybe the systems that's raising us ain't actually doing the job it's supposed to? So I think at this point, and again, I come from a place where I thought my mom did everything wrong, and that's why I ended up in this space. But now that I'm grown, I realized there was no real investment in reunification for her. There was already the assumption that she wasn't going to be able to do a good job as a parent, that she was going to be a risky parent. And now as I see it, I'm like, okay, we don't even actually invest in prevention in the ways that we could. If we know that families are poor, are impoverished, are really struggling to be able to balance taking care of kids as well as taking care of home, instead of providing resources or help, we decide that removal and intervention is the way to go. I think we're starting to see now, though, family matters. It's not, it can't be child welfare without the family, because that child is whole and a part of an ecosystem. You taking them away from it doesn't actually help them in the ways that you think their well-being will be helped. In reality, it disconnects them from their communities, from their family, and their culture. Because that's the other side. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later on. But being in foster care not only had me hating my mom, it had me hating my Blackness. It had me thinking that my Blackness was a negative thing, and there was nobody within said system that was saying otherwise. So I think that for me, one of the biggest solutions that we can do is better connect, better reunify, better support, and better prevent people's communities and families. And like Jarvell said, it's not just the mom, it's the family. These kids come from communities and families, and they're so, the effort to find them is so small versus the effort to remove them, versus the effort to like placement instability. So I really do feel like we need to interrogate the ways that we view people's families. They're not evil, they're not the enemy. Systems in our policies make us work in that way, to the point where even if you're not a social worker, you're a case manager, you don't think that me supporting this child should include me also delivering some type of support to their family, trying to do something that those bridges. As a provider, my first job, so I was working with victims of a person who experienced it, and I quickly attempting to help their families by not even attempting to engage their families. And when I did, I saw such shifts and changes that were sustainable, because the family's gonna be there way long after foster care. If we do a better job of engaging that family, of providing resources and services compared to the thousands, and actually not thousands, the millions of dollars that we give to like actual formalized foster care, I think we're in a different position. But from a practice space, for those on the line who just work directly with young people, don't negate the power person's family. Please don't believe that it's just that young person you need to be helping, when in reality, the family is a resource, is a continued tool, and a continued way to keep that young person connected to where they come from in their culture. They're not bad people, bad things. And honestly, the way in which we lie into that, it's bias. It's racialized bias oftentimes. So I think the biggest solution that I can think to is really big on prevention, reunification, and familial engagement.
Yes, thank you, Sade. I don't even know how we can follow up with that response. It came out very poetic and very powerful. And I really, really, really appreciate just the powerfulness and the passion that you just had at answering that question. I want to welcome Asia, who just joined us, and I want to see if Tori or Marquand wanted to answer that question as well.
I believe she answered it perfectly.
Yes.
I could add though to it. I feel like it just goes all the way, it goes so far back. It's like it's a generational, we're still recovering from generational trauma. And I feel like it's where it's racism, and it starts from a long time ago. Black children being taken away from their parents goes back to slavery, and I feel it's just a modern day way of doing it. And the way they attack us is through our income, through education, our wealth, employment. All that equals up to us being in poverty, which makes it more likely for our children to be taken away from us. And it's affecting our health, giving our kids PTSD, PTSS, it's health and stress, and like racial residential, where you live, housing segregation, mass incarceration. I feel it goes so much farther back to laws and policies. Like we have to change certain laws and certain policies, because even now we recognize the problem and we confront the problem, and what do they say? Nothing's wrong. This is in the law. And what do? They show us the law, and they're right. We haven't changed it.
Yes, yes, very powerful. And I love that you took it back to, slavery and, drew that connection, because it is true and it is a connection and it is rooted in racism and systematic oppression. And so I thank you so much for, that follow up, because it definitely tied all of the pieces that Jarvell and Sade spoke about together. And so the next question that we have is, so you guys talk about, the solutions, preventative measures, the ways that we can, identify reunification and actually be about reunification, ways that we can help the family that is an ally and a resource. What can people who have no foster care, child welfare background or knowledge of the system and the things that are enrooted deeply in the historical oppression of, specifically related to Black foster youth, how can they help? How can they bring awareness? How can they participate in the movement, and hold their counterparts and their colleagues, and, the people that are around them that serve foster youth, accountable? And so I want to welcome Nyasia, and I'll pass that question to you, Nyasia. Please introduce yourself to the audience, because I just love having you here today. And thank you so much for joining us. You're never too late, my love. And so I'll pass that question to you.
Thank you so much. And I really appreciate being here today. I'm to see Raquel and everyone here. What I say in terms of, the deep, the roots that the system has on us, deep as far as history. I'm going to say what we can do for people who are uneducated in that, to help us who have for so long been told in the homes, like, when these people don't say this.
Yeah, wait, I'm so sorry, Nyasia. The volume is kind of chippy. So people are having a hard time hearing you. Is that better? That might be better.
Can I manage? Can I in chat? It's my turn. This phone is.
Yeah, you might have to go off the camera, Nyasia. Yeah, to see. To see if that might make it better. Let's see.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, that's actually perfect.
Okay. So my name is Nyasia Kinsey. I'm glad you guys got to see me for 5 seconds. I'm a former foster youth. I was in the system for 7 to 8 years. I aged out, and through fundings in the system, independent living system, I was able to get an apartment, which I still do live in today. My foster story was one of the horror stories, but it wasn't the worst thing. I actually do think that, the system did help me in a lot of ways. And I'm just happy to be here. So in terms of the question that I was asked by Raquel, I want to say, being told, well, first of all, having social workers and running in and out of, your homes is very uncomfortable. From the social workers to police to teachers, we can't get comfortable with anyone who is supposed to be there to help us. So we don't know what help is oftentimes. So, I would say to the people who haven't been in our shoes, the best way that you can help us after having to be so silent about, our truth for so long, is to do similar things to, like, you know, the foster youth council and Raquel, you know, does for us, which is provide us a space where we can speak our raw truth, even if it makes others feel uncomfortable. And, you know, there's also other things like, you know, you don't have to just give financial money all the time. It's like, you know, just starting these programs, finding out which corners of the world, the earth, you know, there are kids like us who need our help. And if you can, you know, just help us out. As long as we're willing to meet you guys halfway there, you know, I don't see anything wrong with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nyasia. And we appreciate you. I'm happy that everybody got a chance to at least see you. Sorry, you guys, for the technical sound issues. But you guys obviously know that this is a great conversation. So we're just going to keep rolling and just roll through the technical difficulties. And so, Tori, did you need me to repeat the question? I want to pass it to you.
No, I don't need you to repeat it. This is a good question because it's something that everybody can really learn from, you know, everybody can do to assist Black foster youth and just Black people, everybody in general. You know, I'm from California. We got a lot of Hispanics, you know, out here. And so it's like Black, brown, everybody, you know, a lot of times, I think problems stem from how we're raised and then also how you view people. If you have no experience with the foster care system whatsoever, you can help Black foster youth or Black kids or whoever in general by just taking some time to like readjust the way that you think, the way that you view people, you know, because culture matters. Something within your culture is not the same within my culture, but you look upon me as though I'm wrong or that I'm belittled or that I'm inadequate. And so therefore you treat me as such. You know, if we change the way that we think and the way that we view others, we'll change the way that we treat people. If you find yourself already like, hey, I got that, you know, I love everybody, I'm a peacemaker type of person, provide mentorship then to the people around you, you know, like call out some of the things that they say or that they do that you know is not okay, so that everybody can pretty much like eventually become on the same page. Like, I understand that we are not part of the same culture, but I get that what you're doing is what, you know, you like to do. And the mentorship with the young people in foster care, even if you cannot be a foster parent or anything like that, everyone has some type of like lived experience that can help somebody else, you know? And so if you can just provide a little bit of, you know, just mentorship, some big brother, big sister type of experience, you can like educate and encourage the next person, you know, to pass it along. It's like the, what is that? When you do one good deed for somebody and then they turn around and they do it for somebody else, it'll be a chain reaction, you know? And so I think it really stems within heart, you know, if everybody could just like take a good look at their own heart, you will be able to, that'll really change the way that we interact with each other. And that'll trickle into the kids, you know, in the system, that'll trickle into the young people and then just everybody around you, you know, and lead by example, just lead by example.
Yes, I really appreciate that perspective. Wisdom, anybody can pass down wisdom. You do not have to be a part of the child welfare system. You don't have to have had lived experience in order for you to be a benefit and a supportive, you know, factor to, you know, youth development, helping the youth cultivate positive relationships, connecting them to resources, et cetera. So I really appreciate that perspective, Tori. Sade, Marquand, Jarvel, did any of you guys want to chime in to that on that question? Sade, I see you unmuting yourself. Go ahead, jump right in.
So I really love what Tori said around like everybody having an opportunity and having something to contribute to young people's lives. And really just want to reiterate that for the people who don't know anything about foster care, many of them know about kids. They know what it means support young people. These young people in foster care are no different. They just have trauma. They've been separated from their family. They need you a little bit more than sometimes the people who already have their own families and communities. So you have enough already. You can at least be informed of policies and things that's impacting them, and calling your legislator when you see something kind of going on where it's like there's a policy coming down the line around child welfare funding, or if there's something where it's just, hey, they're trying to create something that right now they're trying to create a juvenile justice bill of rights. Actually, I think they already passed it now. So it's like making sure that you're aware of some of these things so you can at the very least be in support of. If you can't be a mentor, and I understand that not everybody has a capacity, a lot of us have capacity for civic engagement, even if it's as simple as a call to your legislator. But I'll say one more thing. For the white people on the call, it's very important that you understand that child welfare in itself is a racist institution. And that doesn't mean that everybody working within it is racist. It does mean that the basis of it's designed in this way. And I put it in the chat, but I really struggle with working with practitioners who don't understand that, who don't understand why Black people don't particularly care for child welfare. It's not just because their kids were removed, it's because it's family policing. It's policing. So the same ways that a lot of African Americans feel towards law enforcement, they feel towards child welfare as well. And it's important for you to step back from your own experience and really listen and learn from that, so that when you're interacting with Black children and Black families, or you learning about foster care, you make sure you have that racial equity lens as you learn. Because when you don't, then you come in assuming that everybody's experience is the same. And as somebody who's now doing research in foster care, who has my own lived experience, who's been a practitioner in it, I'm sorry, I can tell you, there's a very big difference between Black children experience in this system and really any other demographic. And it's not to say, put the whole weight in oppression Olympics. It's that part of child welfare's initial design was to separate Black families and Indigenous families. So like you have to call that out. That's the root. That's the explicit root of its creation. And if you want to have a little history lesson around it, I don't mind engaging you there. But when you don't see it in that ways, then you can't see the inherent racism that's embedded in the practices, the way that you interact with court systems, the fact that so many of the attorneys and judges are white that get to make the decisions for these families of color. So it's really important to interrogate not just what is foster care, but what is foster care in the context of racialized history?
I'm so sorry, Raquel and Sade. I just wanted to make sure I knew that you were finished speaking, Sade, because
okay, you got it.
That's something that I cannot believe you said, because I'm glad, because it's actually something that has made me so strong today, because I didn't accept it. But nothing wrong with being a welfare, it's not. But I was so traumatized. They called me up and they said, you know, what I see my mom go through, whenever she wanted to quit a job, she could, because she had Section 8 and this and that, she wanted to come back. And, being a child, seeing my mom do that, I didn't get it. But then going to college and seeing a better future for myself, I said, you know what? I started to see the trap in it. And it's like seeing how hard, going further and seeing how hard this world is. You know, I'm grateful that when Section 8 called me, and I don't tell a lot of people this, you're the second person I told this. And they actually have your name, the first person. They called me and said, I have, hi, this is such and such from Section 8. I said, how you doing? Thank you so much, but I just want to cut you off right there. I appreciate you, but I don't want it. Now in my head, what I left in my head, in my heart was, I didn't want to wind up like my mom, because I know I had a bad temper at the time. And I said, you know, if I get on that assistance, I know I'm going home as soon as the slightest inconvenience. And that's not healthy. That's not okay. I have to go out, I have to be functional, I have to be social, I have to learn how to do all those things. And because if I don't, how can I raise a strong Black man or a strong Black woman? So, you know, I don't tell people that, because, you know, if I tell, I live in NYCHA. If I tell anybody in NYCHA I turned down that Section 8, oh man, it's a whole nother story. But thank you for mentioning that, because it's a real trap. It's a real trap. It's helpful, and I would take it if it ever meant that I did not have a home. Nothing wrong with that. My mom had Section 8. We lived in upstairs, downstairs houses. I still said no. That's it. I'm out, y'all.
Wow. Yes. Thank you, Sade. Thank you, Atori. Thank you, Nyasia. Thank you, Jarvel and Marquand. I feel like that was such a powerful way to answer that question. And I kind of feel like I want to skip the next question and no, actually, no, I don't, because I want to ask both questions, but I feel like we were like literally on the route, but I want to take us back to racial bias and discrimination and all those factors that play in the disproportionality of Black foster youth. And so I want to ask you guys, what are some of the things that you have experienced yourself through your experiences? Some of the economic, struggles and challenges, and some of the ways that, you have identified that the foster care system, through your personal experience, has racial bias and discrimination, while in care and after care. So, Marquand, I'll start with you.
So first thing I've noticed, the help that a guardian will get versus someone who's just fostering you that you have no relationship with. So what I noticed is under the guardianship, like I'm able to have these type of conversations. I'm asking, how much money do you get for me? How much for food stamps and everything? And the amount is very surprisingly low compared to someone who is just fostering you, who you're not even related to, no connection, no nothing. But the numbers will surprise you. You'll wonder why is this one who's related to me, who I rather live with, get less and making it harder for them to take care of me when this is an unexpected event for them and an unexpected event for me. And yet they rather help someone totally random who doesn't really even know me. And I feel like that type of system right there is why it's easier for us to be separated, why it's harder for us. And it paints a bad picture on the system, really. And that's all I have to add for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Sade. Go ahead.
Give me a second. Somebody else can go first. I want to, because he said something that just hit me. So give me a second.
Jarvel, Atori, Nyasia, did you guys want to chime in while we give Sade her a second?
This is a lot. It's a lot of questions. And it's only a lot because there's so much to tackle. Not that I haven't dealt with my mess, because I have, trust me. But it's a lot to tackle. I immediately go back to the lunch tables, the lunchroom, and I already know. I can look at this panel right now and tell you that the similar experiences, if not same experiences, getting that lunch line, handling that ticket, handling that lunch card, depending on what school you was from. I had the opportunity to go to 7 high school, right? And I tell people that so many times that it just rolls off the tongue, and people are like, 7 high schools? I'm like, yes, I've been to 7 high schools within the Chicago land area. And when I say land area, I mean I've been to the suburbs, to west side, to the south side, okay? And it has been difficult seeing the disparities within just how children are fed to nourish themselves throughout the day, right? And then growing up, I didn't really see that, right? When I was in elementary school, right, we were all fed the same thing. But when I entered middle school, and my adopted parents at the time moved to the west suburbs, that was the first time I saw that students were being fed different things based on what they could afford. And I didn't really know if students knew that I was in foster care. I wasn't really comfortable sharing it at the time, but I did know that depending on what you could afford, you could either get these little small skinny cheese sticks with some marinara sauce and a fruit cup versus this whole large spread of salad with chunks of nice cooked chicken breasts and bacon bits and everything. And I mean, I'm healed and I'm grown now, and so I can afford this. So I can say this. I used to steal that salad. Okay, back in the day, I actually stole salad and used to go and try to get things because they had to weigh the salad. But I digress. There's a lot to say about what it means to have your parents fill out the form when you're registering for school, and a simple check of foster youth gets you the opportunity to be a part of that, whether or not your economic status is higher than someone else's. Simply you being a foster youth gives you the opportunity to get free and reduced lunch. And so, which gave me the opportunity to go to all the field trips for free, gave me the opportunity to have a few other sports fees and activity fees waived, which in my mind, I was like, okay, that's fine. You know, it is what it is. But then to hear my adopted parents every single month tell me, do you know how much you get paid? Right? Do you know how much we get a check for you every month? We don't get nearly enough to pay for you, right? And I'm just like, that's crazy, you know? And then the amount of time and energy it took for me to actually unpack my worth and value to that check, that state check every month, it requires so much. And so I think it really boils down to just what it means to look at the system in regards to how African Americans and Black and Brown people have always seen their value attached to monetary gains, and what it means for us to go through a certain experience that is different than white youth and people of the white experience. It's I've never, very rarely got asked the question if my parents were my parents, right? Never asked, you know, oh, is that your son, right? They would just say, no, this is my son and this is my other son, right? And we'll move on to the next. But as soon as people hear that you're a foster youth, it's a complete, again, smokescreen experience of, okay, well, you must get this, this, and the third, when really you don't. And so, yeah, I think that just has a lot to deal with what a student has to go through when they're in school, again, because going into my college years, I did receive, again, a check a month, but I would see the experiences that other students who weren't in care were going through. And I'm like, y'all could barely pay for college, and yet I'm getting this stimulus check, you know, that helps me pay for my food on top of that food stamps, right? To help me pay for, you know, what I need. And then I still get to go into the residence halls and eat and everything. It really just says a lot to what are they preparing you for? What is the experiences that other people have around you that they don't know, or you're, you know, offering that and sharing it. It's different. And what does it do to your self-worth and value to say that you as a person, and because of this check, because of your status as a foster youth, are given certain opportunities as a result of that. And I'll end with this. I went to Wendell Phillips High School, which is in Chicago. And I say the name because the name is historical, and how, you know, it had a lot to do with the NAACP movement within Chicago, and what it means for African-American students to go to a school that is now so heavily policed. Just the security guards literally wear tasers on their belt. Students have to, you know, have like this very block hall pass just to go to the restroom. And then like you can hear the walkie-talkie down that the student is going to the bathroom. But during the lunch time, everybody got the same thing, right? Everybody received the same lunch. And then that was the only time in my life that I felt like I was the equal of all the students around me. It doesn't matter where I came from, right? It didn't matter where I was, whether, you know, I was in foster care and you weren't. We were the same. We were receiving the same experiences. And so I think that no matter if you are in care or not, the Black experience being reduced to your economic status or whatever you have monetarily really goes to show just how less we've been receiving all this time, and what it means for us in terms of what we have to go through, even when we are put through a set system. So yeah, that's all I'll say for that.
Thank you so much, Jarvell. Sade, did you want to join in, or Tori, Naisha, did you guys want to chime in? Sade, go ahead, take us away.
So I did a small stint as a child welfare worker. I graduate school, internship, and it was very hard for me. I thought I wanted to be a social worker, but I also knew in the back of my head I really didn't, because I kind of I wanted to help people, and I had saw the ways that social workers have really tried to help people, but the policies, and that's when I say like a racist institution, the policies uphold it, just like there can be really good police officers, but the policies in which you have to uphold are inherently racist. But I wanted to be a social worker, and I knew I couldn't do it because I had a removal, and I had a removal of a child, of somebody's baby, and the mom was in foster care herself. And when I did my whole little spiel and that came out, the person, and for the social workers on the line, you know what I'm saying, the structured decision-making model, which is the risk assessment, there's a question on there: has the offending party ever been in foster care? And if you are, it increases the risk. It increases that little assessment. So just by proxy of yourself being in foster care, you are seen as somebody with a higher risk of maltreatment towards your own child. It's kind of what ended up influencing this decision, and it broke me because I could not understand how that person's experience in the system and being harmed in the system somehow materialized into her not having the capacity to take care of her own child. I say this because, like I said in my intro, my mother was in foster care, and I'm a new mom. I have a 2-year-old, and I'm really, really scared that the same system, like that, I have real fears around this. But the other side of this is that all of that's in racial discrimination. We remove Black kids more than we remove any other kids. We keep Black kids longer than we keep any other kids. And then we have these policies that criminalize those who end up in said system. So when we talk about racial discrimination being a factor, it's the basis for this. And we have to question, we have to start to really dismantle and take pieces and pieces out of the policies that we're upholding. Because now we have a whole new generation of Black kids who coming out of the system, who now have this cloud over their head of potentially being interred into that same system. And I like giving statistics because it's not just the people that's on this line. And as I'm pretty sure you all know, and it's the reason as we're all here, this is systemic. And now we have decades of research that's showing us that we've went into Black communities with the ideology that they don't know how or have the capacity to take care of their kids. And because of that, we have generations upon generations of families that are being completely separated and communities being obliterated. I'm really big proponent on what can we do to this community, this family. And that's because I just don't think the system is the answer in this way. I don't. And now as a grown woman with a career, one of my biggest fears used to be being homeless because I was homeless for a time. But now as a grown up and a mom, my biggest fear is that that same system that I was a part of, that my mom is just a part of, I won't have the full capacity to keep my kid away. It's about race though, because since I was a social worker, I got to work with families that were not Black, and the ways that they were treated were very different. They had a little bit more margin for error, if you will. So racial discrimination is a big part of it, and the ways that it continues to impact us is not even just while we're in foster care. I'm grown as hell, and I got the same degrees that a lot of y'all on this call have, but that's a fear I have over my head all the time. So I think you can't separate this, like racial discrimination, racial bias, it's there, it's at the roots of this. So even as we unpack how it impacts us in the work that we do so that we don't have to be biased, you have a policy that's kind of instructing you to utilize bias. There's reports and a lot of pilots around how we can push against this. There's blind reporting, which is taking race and environment and communities out of the you know how you call in, so like a mandated reporter can call into an agency and be, hey, this kid is coming to school with no shoes on. One, we need better training for that as well, because I think a lot of people call for reasons that have nothing to do with actual child maltreatment. But you know, the blue sheets where you see the, you call them, you tell them the race of the child, the race of the family, the address. And research has shown that seeing the race and seeing the address makes you more inclined to intervene if it's a primarily Black community and if that's a Black child. And they saw that when you took the elements out of that sheet, did the investigation more often than not, you were willing not to go. When you didn't see that it was a Black child, then oftentimes the report was not unsubstantiated, but like it didn't meet the level of intervention. So I think we need to look at what practices are going on in the state, in the US, that are that are pushing for ways to take race the equation as we assess families' capacities to care for themselves. But we can't unlink child welfare from race. And I think oftentimes we try to be very veiled in racial equity or not necessarily being explicit to the fact that these two things are very much together. When we talk about child welfare, there's no way not to talk about race, and there's no way not to talk about anti-Blackness. And for everybody on this call, it continues to impact us, even though we're no longer in foster care.
Yes, Sade. I don't know how we all can follow up after you, love. You just, just really driving the points home. And I really, really, really appreciate you, talking about the generational trauma that you experienced, because it's crazy. It almost brought me to tears because, when I first started here at my job, I was becoming a new mom. And I remember my baby got sick and my boss was like, well, are you going to take her to the hospital? And I was like, no. And she was like, why? And I was like, because I don't want them to take my baby. And we had like a real conversation around this because it's really a real life fear, and me being a 2 master's degree holder, a professional, work, ethic on point, but I still have that fear, that I can't take my child into spaces, because somebody might say, well, because her nose is running, that I'm not a good mom, so I need to have her removed, from my care. And it's really scary. And so I appreciate you sharing that perspective and the trauma. And I want you to know that you're doing a great job as a mom. And if you need community, I got your back because I deal with the same thing. And so, just having that community, could probably, help you get over that, trauma, or at least have somebody that can support you. And I would love to be that person for you. And so thank you, Sade, for that. And so, yes, you guys, I feel so bad, but I feel so good, right? Because one, I feel bad, right? Because the questions are heavy, they are intense. But I feel like that they needed to be this way, because if we really wanted to make the point and we really wanted to drive this points home, especially to the people that are in the audience, those who are going to be rewatching this, webinar, the truth is scary. The truth is scary. And sometimes people are not interested in the truth. And that's why things don't change. And we've been put in positions where we've been fearful to talk about our experiences because of the things that we have experienced. And so I'm just really, really proud of you guys, for just having a tenacity, to be able to come here and talk about your experiences, but do it in a way that, shows your passion, your zest, and you guys are still smiling. And so, after this, I want you guys to, definitely get some self-care and, debrief and, regress. And so moving on, I want to ask this question, and I feel like this might be like the last hard, intense question we have, and then we can get into some resolutions and best practices. And so how do you feel, and what are you guys' thoughts on non-Black foster parents caring for Black foster youth? And I would like to pass that question to Jarvell because he unmuted himself first.
I'm gonna go ahead and tackle this. I received a white family member when I was 17 years old, going into January of 2014, going into 15. Just to give you that time frame of how long not only did I have to heal from there to now, and continuing healing from there to now, but to just see that, what time frame we were in. I do want to just reiterate a point that Sade had said about how sometimes Black families are just stigmatized as being unfit parents, and the practices culturally that we do are just seen as unfit. I remember there was a running joke, I think that all of us can relate to this, that we were like, if white people knew just how many times we've been whooped or spanked, we'll all be at Martha's or in the foster care system, because it's sometimes seen as like, you're not supposed to spank your children. And I remember Oprah was going on her show saying, this does this to this mind, because it does. I'm not going to sit here and say that whoopings and that specific type of punishment doesn't have an effect on your mental capabilities and how you view your value and your worth, because it does. But I will say that that is a traditional thing that happens within many Black and brown families that a lot of us sort of connect with one another about, that can sometimes be demonized and used as an opportunity to call you an unfit parent, which can go into the toolkit of saying that which family can now be a foster parent, right? I know that there was like a campaign in Cook County a few years ago calling for more Black and brown foster parents and more Black and brown adoptive parents. But that list within itself was just so, there was just such a lack of cultural competence within itself of how, I'm not going to care for my child in this way, right? And just because you care for your child in this way, you're better than me. And so I guess that just all divvied down to me being placed with a white family. And it was just a white mom. It wasn't even another, she was a 70-year-old woman who wasn't married. And because she was a physician, because she had many foster kids in the past, and she even, fostered Black and brown children before, she was seen as a person who was able to take care of me at that time. And then I do want to just explain that, yeah, I was 17 years old. So younger people have a better chance of being placed in families that are culturally similar to them. And so it was the best that I could get at the time. And I just took with it and dealt with it, and it was fine. I had my own room for the first time. I was finally being able to go to schools that had textbooks that were new and smart boards and, opportunities within the arts that I really cared about. They were doing Hairspray, which is just inherently racist, but I dealt with it because it was a show that I thought, could get me to the next stage in my performative career, my performing arts career. And so my connections were expanded. My economic status kind of imploded, where no longer had conversations about the check I got a month. If anything, that check came to me directly because she didn't need it. But I always like to say, what cost did all of these experiences have on my identity, right? How much did I have to censor myself around her friends? I didn't want to trauma vomit over everybody and explain, the abuse that I experienced from my people, right? And I didn't want to explain what that meant for me, to have to, experience that from my people to other, white people who, would look at this as an opportunity to say, yep, see, they don't know how to, handle their kids. And I'm just like, what can I do to create a persona that says, I'm fine, I've dealt with my mess, and just the fact that I'm here with you and afforded all these opportunities now, I am good and don't need any more therapy, don't need any healing, I'm good. When in fact, I wasn't. I was hurting, and I was allowing more harm to happen around me because I wanted to fit in. And so, man, we can go all through this, but it was difficult to have that conversation with her, right? Because she is a caring person individually, but the system within itself is not, right? It expected me to be grateful because I was here. Many people like me wouldn't have had the opportunity to do so. If I had a violent case, right? If I was known to fight or to explode on people, whatever, I'm sure I would not have been placed with her. But because it was just a matter of civil disagreements, I had the opportunity to be around her. So there's just so much to unpack about that. But I will say this. I believe that white people within themselves culturally can foster. I do not think that they should adopt Black children. I feel that strongly Because foster is supposed to be a temporary experience. It's supposed to be a transitional period for people to go from step A to step B, right? And some people may disagree. They may say white people shouldn't foster either, right? Because of just the history of just the negative connotations that comes to that. But I think that whatever is needed to give a child the opportunity to prepare for their next permanent home, I think that whoever can do that, but the person needs the cultural competency, the training, the wherewithal to and the access, right? Don't put me in an all-white neighborhood where I don't have access to Black people, right? Or people who are culturally similar to me, which I did. I was in Chicago. I know Black people everywhere, but the system within itself was still segregated for me. And they need that. And so I think that, the foster care system sometimes is used as an opportunity to just extend care, right? And yeah, this was my second semester of my high school experience. So I was going into college. And so they just didn't see any need to like put me in a permanent residency. But I do think that some people are put in foster homes for far too long. And that time is not spent finding an actual home that is best fit for that child. And if God forbid, God blesses that family, that placement, and says, yay, we have all the resources for you. We have given you all of the necessary tools to help you be a self-sustaining person and to still be connected with your people, then fine, right? The long-term placement is what it needs to be. But that doesn't often happen. And sometimes the child themselves are not checked in on how it is affecting them and how it's affecting them spiritually as well, which is very important to me. I don't know how deep I want to go into this, but I was introduced to guys that were not serving me. I'll just put it that way. And I didn't have the opportunity to really hone in on my cultural background and my ancestry that would be best fit for me until I was around people that actually had that understanding. And so, yeah, that's all I'll say about that.
Thank you, Jarvell. You said a great amount, and I want to pass it over to Marquand and give him the respect to answer the question, especially hearing two Black males who experienced the system speak up about this. This is one of the reasons why I felt like having your perspective today was extremely important. And so thank you so much, Jarvell. Marquand, take us away.
So I've had the experience of being fostered by Black and white, and the white experience being fostered by a white person wasn't bad. It was actually a good experience, but the lack of understanding my history and the lack of understanding my needs, the lack of understanding, I wasn't learning anything that I needed to really know. I wasn't being taught my history. I was being transformed into a whole view to the point where I disliked Black people and I was Black myself, to the point where I literally just want to put lotion on as I'm 5 years old, wanting to put lotion on to make myself look white. It was that bad in my head. And I'm not realizing that it's just because I simply don't understand. And the way that they were painting the Black people, my foster parents, it didn't really help me. Like, I don't believe that they should adopt either. I believe that they should be able to foster, of course, because it's supposed to be a temporary condition. But it's a nightmare though, because Black children are already less likely to go back to reunification to their families. They spend longer time in foster care, and you're losing so much value. You're losing so much learning. I had a friend who was also in foster care, and she had white parents. She actually had got adopted, and she would stress that she couldn't get the stuff she needed for her hair, even if she was to tell them. They were expecting her to use what her stepsister, foster sisters were using, when she's a whole different race, a whole different person, a whole different needs. The needs are just different. And I would see it, and like, they were taking care of her, like as far as like food and like just regular stuff, but as far as like what you actually need in order to pass on to your kids and to the next generation, it to me it wasn't there. And that's all I have to add.
Thank you, Marquand. Atori, I was just gonna call on you. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, of course. I think this is a topic that everyone could relate to if they've been into foster care, because there's limited placements, and people are, it's all different type of people who host placements, so eventually you're gonna go with somebody who doesn't look like you. And that was my very first experience going into foster care. I was placed at a Hispanic home, and I talk about this all the time when I will go and talk to youth and who are still in foster care, because I thought it was okay. When I got to the house, I'm like, oh, okay. Moving from where I was, they have this 2-story home in Fontana, and it looks beautiful. And I'm like, okay, yeah, this might be actually a good look, And I get there and it's like the total opposite, it's just the cultural disconnect is really what did it. The outside looked great, but on the inside, it was just, I couldn't communicate properly. I stayed inside of my room all of the time. For dinner, it's like, what are we having again? Because I'm not eating that. I've never ate anything like that before, and then when it came to my skincare, I've had acne all my life. So oh, try this, oh, try that, and it's not helping. You're giving me products that you think, could help, but they're not helping. The price on the, Black products are a little more pricey. And so it's like, okay, we're not spending all of that money for that, but you can get that. And then it's not taking care of my hair. And now I got to go to school and my hair is looking all crazy. Now it's messing up my, my confidence levels. So it was a lot of just disconnect there. Even to the point to where it was like they had to pick me up from school. Please do not pick me up in front of the school, because now I have to answer questions by my friends. Tori, who is those people? What happened? Why are these people picking you up? And so it was different to the point to where I actually ran away. I just didn't understand. They didn't understand me. I didn't understand them. And then they had other children, biological children in the home. So let us go out to dinner. I'm the oddball for sure, sitting at the table. And the food was one thing that's like, if you foster children outside of your culture, get to know some of the stuff that they like, that they're used to, because that gives them a sense of home. That would have given me a sense of like peace, being able to eat. But the fact that some of the stuff that you're serving, I've never eaten before, now I'm starving, or I'm eating all snacks, and I'm just not feeling good about myself. When I left that home, thank God for CASA volunteers, because they played a very big role in voicing that situation to the courts, to where I was never placed inside of a home outside of African Americans after that. I really stressed that, and and a part of it is because I was a teenager when I entered foster care, so I was able to voice my opinions. But imagine how like the young kids, feel. I'm sure they feel some type of way, but they don't know how to say it. They don't have anyone to say it to, and so we got to really like make sure that we're asking those type of questions and just hearing the feedback from older young people. If it affected me that way, I'm sure it's affecting some other kid that way, and they're just unable to really speak on it. So I don't think that, white people should adopt. I don't know. It's to each his own, but it wasn't beneficial to me. I will tell you that it affected me tremendously, and it made me feel less than who I was, for sure.
Yes, thank you, Tori. And I want to say too that Black, while we're on the subject of non-Black foster parents, being Black doesn't automatically give you a stamp of approval for and introducing us into your households either. Because while we are talking about non-Black parents, I've experienced my hair being permed and burnt out from in the Black home and in the white home, and it was due to lack of knowledge. And I think that those trainings need to happen, and need to be integrated in the process. If you want to be a resource parent and there's a chance that you might have Black children living in your home and you're okay with that, then you need to have some cultural competence. You need to get some education. You need to learn about different products. You need to learn about different hair textures, and I think that needs to be something that happens across the spectrum, and not just because someone is Black. Because I was in a woman's home that was Black, but we were in Hollywood, so it still was a difference, versus if I probably would have been in a home in Compton, because she still lacked the knowledge of, how to properly care for my hair. And I think that, I wanted to just add that in there because I don't want people to listen to this, recording or in the audience thinking that, we're like Black is right. Like, no, Black foster parents need to be educated too. But the disparities, the numbers, highlight, a high trajectory of, non-Black parents possibly having Black foster parents, and the way that we come out, feeling after the fact. And so thank you so much, Atori. Jarvel, I see you with your hand raised. I'll pass it back to you.
I just wanted to add really quick before we move on, the importance of the different, because I don't think we talked about, I think it was mentioned group homes, shelters, transitional living facilities, all of that. I think depending on the amount of students, I keep going to students because I serve students, excuse me. We keep going back to serving foster youth and, depending on their backgrounds, depending upon, if it is a primarily Black and brown serving institution or not. I remember Aunt Martha's is just the first that comes to my mind. It's just extremely different, right? On the south side of Chicago versus another facility that is highly resourced, right? It's probably still serving a high amount of Black and brown students, youth, but the staff is just completely different, right? They're not representing the folks who are in care there. So I think it's also important to think about the facilities as well and the institutions that are serving Black and brown youth and the types of people who have the closest proximity to those as well, depending on your caseworker, your therapist or psychologist, whoever also is trying to help you move along your journey. They also have to be ethnically similar to you as well and culturally similar to you as well, because for me, having a caseworker who was Black helped me so much, right? She was the one who, full disclosure, helped me figure out that my adopted parents stole my identity, my social security number, and was using my stuff and had my credit all the way up at 16, 17, right? And so, she was all the way in it, all the way up until her untimely death. Rest in peace to you. But I have to say that your worker, the people that you are working with in the system, has to be also culturally and ethnically similar to you, because it's necessary as you begin to see and reap the benefits as well. Because there's benefits to being in the system. It can be, but we have to demystify what being a person in care is and what it means to be someone working in that system, right? It's a community aspect. It's the collective. It's not, one person for all, right? So that's all I want to say.
That was very nice. That was very nice what you said. I really appreciate everything you said here. But branching off from what Raquel said, actually, I've never actually been in a foster home where I can give you an exact comparison to what it's like. I've never had a white foster family to be able to give you an exact comparison of what it is, but I do feel like we definitely have to actually do these background checks, because I remember a time coming up to the agency, what had happened to the child was so bad that This very professional woman, I won't give her position or her name, up at my agency, let me know she was just feeling so down that day. And she let me know because this white woman came in dressed with white skin. She came in dressed very nicely. You know, they didn't even run the background check on her. When they found out whose home the child was in, all I know is that it was just the child, what had happened to the child was just so bad that then they had to run the background check and realize there was no way that this woman should have ever been able to foster any child. But I'm branching off of what Raquel said. So, you know, I just wanted to say that is, you know, like regardless of skin, like it's a real big issue when it comes to race and culture and how they treat white people versus Black people. Even in terms of, you know, a white woman who doesn't have kids and a Black woman who doesn't have kids, we always have to go through the most. Next thing you know, it's why aren't you married, or this and that, or I don't know about her. You know, we have to jump through a lot more hoops to be able to treat a child really well and bring a child into our home. And it shouldn't be that way. But I will say, based off what Raquel said, living in New York City in a melting pot, I had one home where I had to go to, and the woman was Black, but the culture was so different because she was of Caribbean descent. So the way they treat their children differently is completely different from, you know, how I grew up. The way she cooks, completely different from how I like to eat. But all that aside, like honestly, this is one of the worst foster homes I had ever had. She would believe that, you know, like locking up the whole entire kitchen was okay. And when the kitchen wasn't locked, there was no food. But she would do things like give her children $500 extra for a coat, or and honestly took my money for 6 months plus of me being there. So, you know, but I do feel like as long as the background check is ran, as long as, you know, it seems they ran through all the checks, you know, we really dig deep in culture. We have them answer the really good questions when they're sitting there taking those 8-hour, 16-hour classes every year to renew their licenses or whatever. To be able to be foster parents, we ask them more real questions that really affect us. Because honestly, just to see them in there, just sitting down for a few hours, answering questions that have nothing to do with us and that a 5th grader can answer, it just is not going to serve us. That's just all I had to say.
Thank you, Nyaja, and I appreciate it. I literally just wrote this and wrote it in the chat, something into you know, in comparison to what you're talking about. And I really, really just want to say thank you so much, you guys. I know that was like the first part of this was very, very intense, you know, in terms of, you know, you guys' experiences and some of the experiences of other Black foster youth. But I want to say that I'm very proud of you all for just really just showing up today and doing it unapologetically, you know, and that's really the most important part. And so I want to get into some of the, you know, some solutions. And so what are some solutions, some best practices that can educate those who serve Black foster youth? And I would like for you guys to, you know, all answer, but one person answer in terms of the social worker, somebody answer in relation to the resource parent, someone answer into relation of judges and you know, the attorneys, and then someone answer in relation to, you know, just in general, the CASA workers, those who serve foster youth, the school officials, etc. And so I kind of want to divide that up. So Jarvell, I saw that you unmute yourself. Which one do you want to take away? Which one do you want to take away in terms of solutions and better practices to educate those who serve Black foster youth?
See, and I think that I'm going first because I have to say I'm going to answer all of them within
I love that.
aim of this answer. I'll say this. And this is something that I think that I was introduced to actually when I was in Peace Corps, actually, when I was teaching English in China a few years ago, and how I saw that the white supremacist ideologies that perforate within our system here is something that is we have to deconstruct completely. And it all has to do with the child, right? We always talk about the needs of the child, but we never surround them with people who actually care about the personal growth, professional development, the mental capacity of that child, the spiritual growth of that child. So I would say that developing a community of care from the very beginning is necessary, right? Involving that child, excuse me, with people who are with organizations who sole purpose is to help that child and help children like them reach goals, right? To make it into to break boundaries, to break generational curses, right? To give them an opportunity to just be children. So many times I think about my childhood and I'm like, damn, where's the positive experiences? Oh, okay, Beyonce. All right, cool. I remember single ladies. I remember Rihanna. Where have you been? Okay, cool. I remember going to the mall. Okay, I have to remember those things or remember the communities of care I curated for myself, right? The people that I was around that helped me, my English teachers, right, who were mostly white, I have to say that, but still were a part of my communities of care. People around me, my social workers who I trauma vomited all over, but could take that in because they were part of my communities of care. So curating that, offering that first, right? Because it can change, right? These people are transient and they do not need to be here, right? This is your caseworker, right? Do you like them? They cool? Are you floating with them? How is it going with you? All right, cool. I had the opportunity when I was 17 to actually change my caseworker because I wasn't floating with him. Right? I was like, he's not here. I'm a Black queer man. I'm not feeling that he actually understands my experience. Give me a Black woman. I need someone else, right? And not to say that Black women can deal with all the experience and trauma that I'm experiencing because they cannot. But I felt like at that time I needed somebody that could understand me. So I was like, I need this woman. She's here, right? My other caseworker just died. I'm still unpacking all of that. I need somebody, a part of my community of care, who actually can help me be a better me. And so I had the opportunity to change that. I was a very interesting young man, but I really was thankful that they were even open to that opportunity to change my caseworker and to give me a GAL, which is a guardian ad litem, to help facilitate the next transition of my life. Because entering adulthood is hard as a foster youth, right? It's an opportunity to really, again, unpack all of the issues and the growth that has happened along your life. But again, it's, entering a world that is so unkind, right, to those experiences of children in, to begin with. And then you're a foster child at that, right? Like, you have to have a community of care, people around you who were created for your development. And I think that the key word there is community, right? Because that within itself creates a culture, which is normal. It demystifies this taboo nature of foster care to begin with, right? Because there are people who already have communities of care and it's just normal for them, right? Why can't we make the same thing? And I know that there's so many resources like DACA, CASA for Kids, right, that are creating these communities of care innately from the very beginning, because they know how important it is to surround children with people who are actually there for them. And the last thing I'll say is this, because I said I was going to answer all of them. I'll say this, that they have to know each other. They have to know each other's names. They have to be aware of the resources that are already being provided for you. They have to understand how everybody's role best fits within your life, because they can't all be coming at you from different pathways and levels without knowing that this is what you are here, right? Just how we have individualized plans for kids when they're in school, if they're having difficult developmental issues, we have to have the same thing for foster youth.
I love that. And thank you, Jarvell, for answering all of them, because we certainly needed somebody to answer all of them. And I love that you did that. And you are interesting, but powerful and awesome and amazing. And I appreciate having you today. So Sade or Tori, Marquand, Asia, I know we have one more question before this, but I definitely want to give at least one of you guys to the opportunity to, you know, chime in after Jarvell. Take us to church, Sade.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. There's a little delay. I didn't know if Tori or Marquand wanted to say something. As far as solutions, I'll say something I feel like is applicable to everybody. Learn about Black culture. Take a pause and learn about Black culture. One of the things that I like listening to Marquand talk about, like having experiences where he hated his Blackness, like that's so poignant to me because I know I felt the same way in the system. Like I thought that Black people were bad because of how entrenched we were in foster care, how entrenched we were in juvenile justice, how many friends I had in my group homes that ended up in juvenile hall from the group home. Like I always thought that these things were linked to Blackness because nobody was telling me otherwise. There was no conflicting message around that. But now I'm grown and I went to a historically Black college. Shout out to A Different World because that's the only reason I decided to go. But I happened to go to a Black college, which I also say for the social workers, ILSP told me don't go to a HBCU. They was like, oh, well, it's very expensive. We won't be able to support you. But think about this. I'm a Black foster youth and I want to be educated and I want to be around my own people. Wouldn't us being a culturally competent system be supporting me to go to a HBCU? But it was looked down upon, as well as questioned whether my degree would actually be valid. That's racist, by the way. But like, you know, these conflicting messages. But once I learned about Black people, the real Black people, our culture is so dope. Our history is amazing. And I'm like, why was this not a conversation during my group home meetings? We used to have weekly meetings where they tell us all the rules we getting wrong, dock our allowances, or we have the weird sex talks that end up going to the left, or y'all are doing this. And I'm like, why couldn't we use some of this space to actually talk about the culture of the girls that's there? History lessons, affirmations, something powerful and strength-based, because those wasn't what I was getting. And don't get me wrong, I did read Black history as a kid, but it was on my own. And by the time I got into group homes, I started feeling like a lot of that stuff was lies because what I saw around me was Black peril. I didn't see any goodness within it. I went to the, you know, you go to court and all the people there are like Black. And then I'm from Alameda County. I'm in Oakland. We were doing dependency court in the same space as criminal court. So you literally are seeing a schism of Blackness integrated into systems. So for me, I needed to be re-educated. And I'm gonna encourage all of y'all, it's time for the re-education of the ways we view and treat and believe Black people or where they come from, because this is a beautiful culture. And if I would have known that while I was in care, I probably wouldn't have hated my Blackness as much as I ended up doing so. But luckily for me, let me shout out, because I never had a white parent, but I did have a white teacher who I met when I was 15. I got kicked out of school and then I fought and got back in, and I met this teacher. He was white. And I was very much like, well, I don't trust white folks. And that's because my social worker, everybody was white and they was not cool. But this teacher actually took the chance to educate himself while educating me. And when I say he changed up the lesson plans, we were supposed to be reading Canterbury Tales, you know, the requirement, and he switched it up to where I can do comparative analysis of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. And it gravitated me towards education, but also understanding my own history. He adjusted, he learned so that he can teach me, so he can make space for me. That's important. We all have to be re-educated. We all have to take a little bit more interest, just like how 2 years ago after George Floyd, this whole racial reckoning, that one, that has to continue, but two, it requires us to begin to understand more about people's culture so we can empower them through it, so we can show them love and kindness and courage. Hey, Kit. I'm a big proponent on making sure that we move from culturally competent practices to culturally uplifting practices. Blackness is a beautiful thing. I did not hear that while in dependency, and that matters. So for the providers on the line, for the attorneys, for the social workers, it matters the way that you bring up race. And it's important that you say that I'm Black, and that's not something to ignore. When you ignore it, it makes me feel like it's invalid.
Yes, thank you, Sade. Thank you so much. I appreciate you so much for providing your perspective. And so, our last question, and we're almost getting ready to close out. I have some house stuff that I want to share with everyone in the audience. And so, we've opened the floor up. We talked about solutions. It's so much power, just on during this conversation within you all. I'm so proud of you all. And so if there was a former foster youth, current foster youth that was watching a recording of this or is in the audience right now, what is a word of advice or some key advice, a piece of advice that you can offer them in terms of being Black and ways to navigate through the system? And then if you would like to follow up, what is something that you would like for people to take away from this conversation today? Nyasia, I'll pass it over to you. Or whoever wants to unmute themselves first and, chime in.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. Or
Okay.
Naija, did you want to go?
And then Nyasia, you can follow up.
Okay, sounds good. I really like and love what Sade has to say. She's very explicit with what it is because it's that real, and a lot of times like we sugarcoat this topic, but it needs to be talked about in that type of format, because it's happening everywhere, all over. And if there was any type of which there are, I'm sure, youth who are experiencing any of the topics that we talked about today, I would try to encourage you by saying the world is changing. People are recognizing and hopefully we're moving in a way that's, that most people aren't going to have to deal with some of these same problems in the future. But of course, it's slow progress, but it will progress. You have people like myself, like everyone else on this forum who have lived experience. Mentorship is key. Therapy is key. It doesn't matter what anybody or how anybody treats you or anything. It's about self-development. You have to really dig into self and you have to figure out exactly what you want and how you're going to push through. There's going to be so many other battles and things that come in your way. You have to figure out how do I overcome? Now, unfortunately, there are things that are just out of our control that we just going to have to deal with. But what are you going to do about it? You got to reach out to some people. You got to tap into the resources. You have to speak up for yourself. Do not stay silent. There's no one staying silent anymore. Don't stay silent. Speak up. Say something. And voice how you feel. Definitely voice how you feel. When I was in care, I told them, I don't feel comfortable here, and after enough times of talking to the right people, I was able to change my situation. So just don't settle, don't stay bottled up, release whatever you're going through, whether that's therapy, whether that's sports, whatever you want to get into, believe that. And foster care, if you're in foster care, it's supposed to help you and it's supposed to build you, so what you're asking for needs to be done. So go to the right people to help those things get done. Do not sit back and just allow the system to just walk all over you. Use your own voice.
You want to speak, Raquel? Okay. Can everybody hear me? Okay, cool. I wanna bring a slightly different approach, and I want to say, honestly, sometimes family, whether they're so sweet or so sour, you gotta start to network. In networking, you know what? No, you have to branch out. Go to the library, and meet different people. Go and sit down, make sure somebody knows who you are. Go sit down somewhere and just start socializing with people. And just, network and meet new people, because sometimes, you can't listen to your family, even though all they said was good, all they ever done was good. But that leaves you not knowing this whole other side of the world that you know, we were deprived of for a long time, generation after generation after generation. So, you know, that's just my tip and what I want to leave it on. You know, just go and meet as many people as you can, or get friends that are like family, friends who are like associates. Everyone is who's, you know, positive, and you can just unlock a different part of your brain, something that is interesting, something that you never knew existed. And you'll go so far so fast.
I can go. Okay. Yeah, like I'm like we right here. Yeah, so what I would say to foster youth, especially as they're entering an adulthood, I would say this. Um, do you know that you're loved? Do you know that you are loved? Do you love yourself? Do you love your smile? Do you love your blackness, your brownness? Do you love your hair? Do you love your style, your swag? Do you love your voice? All of these things that make you unique, that make you a person who is deserving of love, of kindness, of acceptance. Do you know? Have you been told this? If you haven't been told this, have you looked in the mirror and have you told yourself? Self-love is key. It's the first thing that we must know in order to unpack all of the trauma, all the gunk that other people have put onto us, right? And that we have internalized for ourselves. And so knowing that you're loved and knowing what to do with that love, knowing how to spread that love, how to connect with other people, person to person, and how to instill in other people a sense of courtesy and grace that you maybe weren't able to receive when you were growing up is some of the first steps to healing and breaking that curse. Just know that if you're prepared to love yourself, you can begin to have the capacity to heal and begin to love someone else. And I think that that's something that helped me open up, begin to open my mind and my heart for other people's capacity to accept me fully, because I'm a lot, okay? I'm a lot to take, okay? You can't just take all this, and I'm not for everyone, but I am for myself. And so I had to learn what that is, right? And to state things that I loved about myself in order to remove the things that I don't. So that's that first thing. Now, what I want people to take from this conversation, I just understand that we are very passionate people about this for a reason, right? We come from an experience of hurt and harm, but we are not ending up that way. What does that say about the things that we got right? What does that say about the things that other people got right in our lives? It says a lot. It says a lot about what it means to be a warrior outside of the I'm a warrior because I'm strong. I'm a warrior because I'm resilient. No, I'm a warrior because I have to be, right? If I wasn't a warrior, I would break, right? And unfortunately, we've lost so many lives to this system. And unfortunately, that's going to continue to happen if we do not have people who, again, are creating community, self-care, knowing their value, and instilling that sense of care in others, and taking the time to just adjust, to change, and to understand, to learn with passion, with intensity, because we don't have time for mediocrity. We don't have time for being left behind, because that's what creates the numbers and the stigma. So that's all I want you all to leave from, at least my words, is that I'm enough. I came here enough, and you are enough. In whatever capacity that 144, 43 people are in, please know that we're not asking you to change the world. We're asking you to change a life. We're asking you to touch a life. We're asking you to touch somebody's heart, to touch somebody's experience, to let them know that they are enough, to just help them along the way, right? If they're having trouble with college examinations, if they're having trouble paying for an admittance test, if they're having trouble getting in contact with their parents, if they're having trouble knowing that they need, right, therapy or just getting in touch with somebody who can help them with unpack some experiences they've been through. Maybe you can be that tool, right? So we're not asking too much from you, but we are asking you to do your part. So that's all I'll say.
All right. For me, I know February is Black History Month, and I'm glad we do have that, and I support it and everything. But what I would like to say, especially to Black people, is don't limit your Black history just to 1 month. Celebrate it every day, and make sure you always every day, because I feel like Black History Month is good. It's very good. I'm not downing it or anything, but I feel that it's limit people. I feel like it's pressured to be limited into 1 month of the year to make people think this is the only time that Black people are important, when really Black people are important every day. All people are important every day, and Black people are part of this earth as well. And I just want to leave everyone with thank you for this opportunity, and I hope everyone has learned something, and I hope we can all make a change. And if I would love to connect with any and everyone on LinkedIn. I'm Marquand Teet, so I would love to do that. That's what I want to leave everyone with. Connect with me, please.
Thank you, Marquand. I'll share you guys LinkedIn and a follow-up email to everyone. So Sade is going to close us out, and then we're going to go. I'm going to pull the PowerPoint back up to do some house stuff.
Okay. To the Black youth, Black foster youth. I hope that you heard the words, what everybody here said, like Jarvell, Atori, Naisha, I hope I ain't butchering your name, sis, Marquand, like, and Raquel, like, we're all Black, and we all made it out of this system. And like, you hear the dope things they done done, like, Atori's working for the Ombuds office. Sis got power. Sis is in a position of power to help people. We got master's degrees up here. I'm sorry, my Quan said he emancipated at 16 and made sure I'm about to be here for my brother. That's Blackness. That's Black greatness. I hope y'all know that y'all are the continuance of a legacy of perseverance, of resilience. And we shouldn't have to be this damn resilient. I give you that. But you come from a body that's strong. Jarvell asks you, do y'all love yourself? Do you love where you come from? Do you love your skin and your hair? And I pray that you get to a place where you can answer yes. Because one thing that we all, as Black people, all people, but I'm talking to Black youth right now, we all deserve to heal. And oftentimes we don't get the space to do that. So I say to y'all, please note that everything that we saying we done, y'all can do, and even more, and even further, and that y'all stand on the shoulders of giants, becoming a giant yourselves. Y'all are great. I don't care what anybody else has said to you, what trouble you done been in, whose house, whose home, how many placements, anything. You are Black gold, literally. And I hope that you know that and see that. And I hope that we can at the very least be a replica of just a piece of all of the things you can do in your own life. I am incredibly inspired to be amongst y'all as panelists. And y'all just remind me how great it is to have this melanin. Thank you.
Yes, Sade. Thank you so much. And special shout out to all of you guys. I want to just say that I'm very, very proud and of the conversation. This event was nothing like I imagined it to be, but in my soul, when I was thinking about different topics that I wanted to tackle this year, this is one of the ones that I just knew was going to hit home and be, of value. And so we are in your chat, you will see a post-evaluation survey. If you attended this, or if you're watching a recording of this, please fill this survey out. Let me know how I'm doing. Let me know what I could be doing better as a moderator, how I can be facilitating these conversations better. If there's topics that you want to see us talk about next year, I'm actually working on the webinar list for 2024. Please fill this survey out and use this. If you are interested, a former foster youth, and would like to join us as a panelist to share your lived experience on one of our webinars, I most certainly will include that information in your follow-up email. We're seeking panelists for our 2023 year webinars. And so in your follow-up email, you'll have a list of all of the webinars for the year, ways that you can register for those webinars. And if you're interested in being a panelist, there's also a panelist request form so that you could access that. We are also, if you're in New York, we're hosting a workshop for foster youth that's dedicated to essentially amplifying the voices of foster youth in New York specifically. And I'm very, very excited about that workshop. It's going to be 2 sessions open for your registration, and that information will also be included. If you are interested in attending any of those sessions, I'm going to drop that information into the chat for you. And please feel free to please feel free to let us know if you're interested in being a part of that. Let me drop I'm going to put the post evaluation in the chat too as well, if you guys would like to access it. Our next webinar event is dedicated to New York foster youth as well. It's called Under Construction, and we're going to be discussing 2 specific policies that shape the New York child welfare system. We're going to be talking about the Raise the Age policy that is happening right now. And we're going to be talking to some panelists from New York about their experiences in the system and ways that we can reshape policy over in New York to make it better for foster youth that are coming out of the state. And so last but certainly not least, the Youth Voice is proud to announce that we are gearing up for our 2023 back to school drive that will represent and serve high school and college bound foster youth. You guys, if you are interested in donating some supplies, if you are interested in receiving a backpack, receiving dorm room essentials, you guys, I have computers, I have mini fridges, I have microwaves, I have covers, sheets, towels, the things that I didn't have when I went to college, the essentials I didn't have when I went to college, and I had to put together. I've created a space so that now we can be able to help support some foster youth in LA County that are getting ready to go to college and are in school. And so if you're interested in being a part of this event, our in-person event is going to be July 29th, but you still have time to help us fill some of these backpacks up by donating supplies. And if you're in LA County and you would like to be a volunteer for the day of the event, we would love to have you as well. And you can find all of that information in the follow-up information email that you're going to receive. And then I'm also going to drop that in the chat too as well. So you guys know all about the Youth Voices Rising program and how we aspire to empower more foster youth. In 2022, I published over 160 stories. I worked with over 100 foster youth to help amplify their voices through workshops and different writing opportunities. And so, and we compensate for everything, for stories. Our webinar panelists here today, when the foster youth show up to be in workshops, because I know what it's like to have my story used, to have my story stolen, and then people turn back around and never ask you how you're doing, how's your day going, do you need resources or any of those things. So you guys, this program is sincerely ran by a former foster youth, is for foster youth, is designed by foster youth, and with your donations and your help, it helps us be able to continue to, push the envelope and amplify the voices of foster youth. So if you're interested in supporting us in any capacity, we greatly appreciate it. And last but not least, if you would like to stay up to date on all of the things that we have going on, please follow us on our social media handles. I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys all so much for being here today. It was really, really great. And I remember when I used to sit in those homes and I used to be sad, wondering why God had me in these positions, hating being in foster care, hating myself, hating my skin color, all of those things. I never imagined that, my life mission would be to advocate for the same community that I once was a part of. And so it just means a lot to be able to amplify the voices of foster youth. It means a lot to be able to educate those who serve foster youth, but ultimately creating a space for all of us to come together and really chime in on the different issues. I really couldn't be able to do this without none of you guys, especially the audience. And so from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you all for being here. I don't want to get emotional, but I really, really, really valued this conversation today. It's very important. Please feel free when you get a copy of the recording to share it with as many people as you want to. It's important that we get these conversations out. It's important that we amplify the voices of Black foster youth. It's important that we just amplify the voices of foster youth in general, because some of the things that we talked about today that we're experiencing, working with Native American and tribal foster youth, and they're experiencing the same things. Black and brown foster youth are going through, over represented, but we are definitely oppressed. And the system was rooted in snatching Black babies from Black parents. And we want to figure out a way to combat that, or at least decrease that, where Black youth who are taken away from their Black families come from out of those experiences still whole, healed, and empowered. And so you guys are all powerful beyond beyond words. We're actually going to be doing an op-ed submission on the same type of conversation and the different oppression that Black foster youth face being pipelined through the systems. And that'll also be included in your follow-up email. So if you have any program participants that would be interested in being paid to write about their experiences, to educate those who serve and empower those who are from the system like ourselves, please share that email with them as well. Again, I want to just say thank you all for being here today. Thank you to our panelists. Shout out to Sarah, who's in the background handling all the tech stuff for me today. I really could not have done that without you dropping those links in the chat. I really appreciate it. And you guys, just thank you guys so much. I hope that you learned something today. And if you didn't, rewatch the recording. Have a great day, you guys. God bless everybody. And I'll see you guys next month. I'll see you guys next month. All right.